Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are in Parshat Emor this morning. We are at Leviticus 23:3.
On 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest, a sacred occasion. You shall do no work. It shall be a Sabbath of the Lord throughout your settlement.
All right, why are we getting this here? Because we got a verse earlier in verse 2. God is saying to Moshe, tell the people, Elehem Mo'adei Adonai. These are the sacred times of Yud He Vav He. So what is the first sacred time we get? Shabbat. The most important sacred time we get, what starts it all, is Shabbat. And for the rabbis, Shabbat trumps everything. Shabbat is the holy day, and always Shabbat trumps any holiday.
Can you find another word? Yeah, can you find another word?
Right. Right.
Overpower is more important than
Shabbat wins every time. Shabbat wins. Shabbat Biden's everything. So yes. So when we have rules that you can't do on Shabbat, but you can on certain holidays, Shabbat wins always. And I think people don't always understand that Shabbat is the holiday, right? And even our holiest day, Yom Kippur, is called Shabbat Shabbaton, right? It's a Shabbos Shabbat, like when they want to talk about how holy that day is. All right, so we get, here we're also getting Shabbat Shabbaton, Mikra Kodesh. You will declare it Kodesh, holy. Kol malacha lo ta'asu, all manner of work you will not do. Shabbati l'yud he vav he. Right? It is a Shabbat to Yud he vav he. B'chol moshvotechem, in all of your moshavim, in all of your settlements. Okay. Fruit?
These are the set times of the Lord, the sacred occasions which you shall celebrate each at its appointed time. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, there shall be a Passover offering to the Lord. And on the 15th day of that month, the Lord's feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days. On the first day you shall celebrate a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. 7 days you shall make gifts to the Lord. The seventh day shall be a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupation.
All right, some of this Torah portion may sound familiar. Mm-hmm. Why are we so familiar with this Torah portion? With this portion of the Torah portion?
It's read on Pesach.
It's read on holidays. So we get the reading of the liturgical calendar as part of the celebration of the liturgical calendar. It's very Jewish. We're celebrating a holiday. Let's read about the commandment to celebrate the holidays. So we read this a lot. But this point in the year is where it falls in our lectionary. Right? This Torah portion, this is where it belongs in our regular reading of Torah, but we see it again and again and again throughout the year. So why did I start where I started and not at a few verses later where Hebcal tells us to start at Yom Kippur? Because this is the beginning of the year. Right? It doesn't make sense to me to jump into the middle of the year. We get Shabbat when we're talking about Mo'adei Kodesh, when we're talking about sacred times. The first thing we get is Shabbat. So a sacred time happens weekly. And then we get the beginning of the year. Because what does it say? Ele Mo'adei Adonai Mikra Kodesh B'chodesh HaRishon. In the first month of the year. So the first month of the year is what?
Nisan.
Okay. So the first month of the year is Nisan. And the first holiday of the year begins. So we have Shabbat, of course, every week. The first major holiday of the year is Pesach. We get Passover. So the year begins in the spring. Makes sense. How come, Sarah?
It's a beautiful beginning.
It's a beautiful beginning.
It's birds. It's
Agricultural society.
It's what?
It's an agricultural society.
It's an agricultural society. So why begin the year in the spring in an agricultural society?
That's when you're planting for the year.
So that's when you're planting for the year. It's actually when things are blooming. So it's when things are coming to fruition. It's when things are born, right, from the ground in the seasons of the year. So the world is coming back from winter, right? Because things bloom in the fall. Things bloom, in other times in the summer. We have the barley harvest, but it's the first blooming of things, the first growth of things since the death of winter.
And the lambs are born in the spring.
So every culture understands the rebirth that happens after the season where you can't grow anything.
This cycle.
Everybody understands that the world is reborn in the springtime. The ancient Israelite tradition was no different. Being agricultural, being semi-nomadic pastoralists, and so you have animals who give birth in the spring. This would have been the natural time to start the year. It would have been continuity with what they were doing when they were pagans, Canaanite pagans, right? So this is the reconstructing by the Israelites of what had always been the beginning of the year, which is the spring, which makes complete and total sense.
And in a way, Shabbat is a celebration of the beginning of everything.
Absolutely, right? So Shabbat begins everything because Shabbat celebrates creation. We wouldn't have blooming in the spring if we didn't have creation.
Traditionally, is Shabbat actually a multiple of 7 days from the end of creation?
Huh?
Shabbat comes every 7 days.
Right.
Traditionally, is it actually a multiple of 7 days going all the way back to the first seventh day?
I'm confused. Does anybody understand the question that can explain it to me?
The seventh day of creation, and then you add another 7, and then you add another 7, and another 7, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm saying traditionally is actually when we say Shabbat now, the actual anniversary, theoretically, of those 7 days?
Yeah.
The exact...
Yeah.
Right.
That's why it's so
sorry, didn't
big.
state it well.
Yeah, no, it's okay. My brain is offline.
Rule till much later. So they started at that day.
But yes, so it's the anniversary of
the seventh day.
God Shabbating and unifashing, right? So God is Shabbating and unifashing, and so we commemorate that every seventh day. And Imitatio Dei says we do what God does, and so we Shabbat and we unafash every seventh day. Yes.
Do we have any idea when the actual calendar was solidified and codified? The Jewish calendar?
So
how far back in the tribal times did they observe this same calendar that we have now?
I'm so sorry. I think I should have taken a decongestant or something to give me a little, so the synapses would connect. I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Canaanite pagan religion evolves slowly into Israelite practice.
Yes.
It is the same calendar, and it continues. We still have it.
In the same form we have now.
In what form? When you say form, what does that mean?
The months and the skipping, having the extra month to make up the days.
Oh, you're talking about that piece. Because the months have to do with the moon. That theoretically has been there since the beginning.
When was that codified?
There's no codification. What we have here is what we observe.
Okay.
It continues from biblical times to now.
Okay, so
right?
we haven't changed anything.
We have not changed anything except what?
Rosh Hashanah.
Except our year begins in the fall.
Yeah.
So that change happens, right, as part of the Babylonian exile.
Well, which year, Amy, begins in the fall? The year began here in the spring.
The year began in the spring. When do we start the new year in our tradition now? In the fall.
But is that a change?
Yes.
Insertion of
Yes, it's a change. When they are exiled to Babylonia, they are no longer an agriculturally based, really, society. And the Babylonians have this coronation festival for the king and the god and blah, blah, blah in the fall. That is when the Israelites locate their beginning of their sacred year in the fall.
Calendars tell you so much about a culture. All the different cultures, the Mayan calendar, for instance, and some of the other cultures in Buddhism and so forth, tell you a lot about how the culture is structured. This one does too, but I just wondered how long it was structured in the form that it is now.
Since early Israelite times, right? And it's based on stuff before that, right? It's based on Mesopotamian
building on.
Yes, it's based on Mesopotamian understandings. I mean, like the names of the month don't come from Hebrew. Mm-hmm. It's Proto-Hebrew, right? It goes back to stuff that isn't Israelite.
Okay, thank you.
And it emerges out of that, and we still observe this liturgical calendar, with the exception of we now added Rosh Hashanah as a thing. Because what do we... Oh, we'll get there.
It's kind of a nebulous area, in a way.
They left the astrological sign of Aries, and when they went to the fall to begin the year, under what astrological sign? It was under Libra.
What do you mean when you say they left Aries?
Well, when they switched over from having the spring festival as the beginning of the calendar to the fall, because of Rosh Hashanah. Well, they would have gone, astrologically speaking, from Aries, the domination of the ram in the spring, to which sign in the fall?
But the astrological shift does not appear in our tradition.
At all.
Not at all. Not to say it isn't there, but the shift from what astrological reality would have been happening in the beginning of the year is completely meaningless to the tradition when it moves into the fall. There is nothing about that. Nothing.
Though they would encounter it in
Yes. So we have ancient synagogues with astrological mazalot on the floor, right? So we know that it was part of their consciousness. Those symbols were part of their consciousness. But remember, it's a lunar-based calendar. So when they're looking at what sun sign is dominant, it's do you know what I mean? It's a different relationship. Their relationship is lunar to the seasons. And so what sun sign is ruling any particular time is not very... We don't have it. Look, I'll put it that way.
Babylonian captivity would be counted.
100%. And so I'm not saying the astrological stuff isn't a part of Israelite consciousness, but it is not something that made it into what we have. It wasn't important enough in terms of the relationship to sacred times, lunar times, for us to have any writing or anything about that. And actually, it made them very nervous because of religious ties and other traditions to the astrological signs, which of course then get tied to gods, and so it made them very nervous. Even though we have it on the floor of synagogues, it made them very nervous. So they didn't want to overemphasize, right, any kind of other power other than Yud Hey Vav Hey.
Aren't there warnings in Deuteronomy against astrology?
No.
No? Well, reading the stars, I thought. No?
There's lots of prohibitions, but we have to be very careful about the terminology, right? So you can't be a soothsayer, you can't perform magic, you can't, but the rabbis can make a carob tree fly by the window. That's not magic. Right? If my halachas according to me make the river turn back and flow the other way, and that happens in the Talmud. That's not magic. Right? So we have to be very careful about our terminology. Yes.
Not to beat this to death, but at the time that we're talking about biblical time, weren't a lot of the predecessor calendars pure lunar? I don't remember, but a lot.
I'm not sure.
A lot of people in that region still stick with pure lunar.
Yes, certainly in the region there were.
Because
it's rectified.
It's rectified. And I don't. When did that come in Babylonia? Because there were some great astronomers in that era. I mean, somebody came up with a really good idea.
It had to be rectified already by the writing of this text because Passover never happens in the summer. Right? So it had to already be rectified.
Was it the Israelis? I mean, was it the Jews who did it? Or, I mean, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ancient invention. It's an ancient, right, understanding.
You're talking about adding the extra months.
Well, I'm just making, Ramadan moves on the calendar because it's a purely lunar system, right? But Passover can't happen in the summer. Because we know when the wheat harvest is. And the Passover had to stay at the wheat harvest. And Shavuot had to stay at the barley harvest. So if things moved too much, your festivals wouldn't be on the harvest days when they're supposed to be. Right. So the year we have beginning in the spring, and let's see what's our first in the first month. So this is Nisan. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month. Why is it on the 14th day of the month?
Because God said so.
Because God said so. Always a good answer, Bert. Full moon.
Right.
Every festival happens on the full moon. If the new moon is the first day of the month, always the 14th day of the month is the full moon. If you have a pilgrimage festival, you don't want people running into each other as they're leaving their tent to brush their teeth. So you put it on a full moon. Yes? All right. So the first day of the month, the 14th day of the month, very important, full moon, twilight, there shall be, what happens then? Pesach Ladonai. So the 14th day, the holiday is Pesach. You give a Pesach to Adonai. And on the 15th day of the month, what happens?
You begin the festival of Matzot.
Chag HaMatzot begins. Day 14 is Pesach. Day 15 begins Chag HaMatzot, a 7-day festival of Matzot. Right? So you don't have to just take my word for it. Whenever you hear me say 2 holidays were put together, it's right here. It is not an 8-day holiday. There are 2 holidays here. The 14th is Pesach. The 15th begins the 7-day festival of Chag HaMatzot. Yeah? So you preserve the semi-nomadic pastoralist tradition of the lambing, and you preserve the observance of the agricultural festival of Matzot, of only using new wheat from the new harvest, meaning no sourdough, meaning no leavening, meaning matzah. Yeah? All right, so here we have 2 holidays. The first 2 holidays are Pesach and Chag HaMatzot. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days for Chag HaMatzot. On the first day, you will celebrate a sacred occasion, and you shall not work. So the first day is Yontif. Right? 7 days, you shall make offerings by fire to Adonai. The 7th day shall be a sacred occasion, you shall not work. The first day and the 7th day is Yontif. Meaning you're prohibited from working.
In Israel. But here it's more than it's 2 days.
For Reconstructionists, it's 1, right? So, but for everybody else, it's 2. But for Reconstructionists, we follow this calendar, and we have 1 day in the beginning is Yontif, and 1 day at the end is Yontif. The 2-day business starts right when they weren't sure about the signifiers and blah 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 blah. So we 2 days, so we are sure that we're doing it on the right day. So, But Mordechai Kaplan said we have calendars now, people.
And satellites.
And satellites. We know when the new moon is. We don't need a witness to the new, right? So we don't need somebody in Israel to witness the new moon and then light signal fires. We have a calendar. So let's do what the book says.
And the internet.
And we have the internet. There you go. Well, Mordechai Kaplan did not have the internet. Let us be clear. All right. Verse 9.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, When you enter the land that I am giving to you, and you reap its harvest, you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest. He shall elevate the sheaf before the Lord for acceptance in your behalf. The priest shall elevate it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day that you elevate the sheaf, you shall offer as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb of the first year without blemish. The grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of a measure of choice flour with oil mixed in, a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. And the libation with it shall be of wine, 1/4 of a hin. Until that very day, until you have brought the offering of your God, you shall eat no bread or parched grain or fresh ears. It is a law for all time throughout the ages in all your settlements.
Okay. So we get the uktsartem et ktsira. So you're harvesting your harvest. Vehevetem et omer reshit. You will bring omer, right? From the first of your harvest. Vehenif et haomer lifnei Adonai. And the priest shall henif the sheaf before Adonai.
Okay.
Which means?
Rita, why are you looking at me like that?
Because I don't know that word.
Because you don't know that word. Because this is the context in which we get that word. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know this word, right? So what does it mean? Tnufa. We see the word tnufa when we talk about the heave offering. So other places it's called heaving, right? Here it's called elevating. So vehenif. So we're not sure. We're not sure. Some people want to suggest it's placed on the hands of the priest. Oh, you also see it being a wave offering. Mm-hmm. Right, so it's placed on the hands of the priest who then does something with it.
Kumbaya.
In order. Is that what that looked like? So he does something with it that seems to indicate that he is designating what's been put in his hands to the deity. What that action is, we don't know. But we see it other places where a chunk of the animal's put on his hands, and it is a wave offering, a heave offering.
It's lifted up, right?
Something about lifting up, and some kind of physical, thing to indicate that this belongs to Yud He Vav He. All right, so we are right now, right? What's the period that we're in now between Pesach and Shavuot? The Omer. Oh, right. There it is. That's where it comes from. Right? The Omer. We are counting from the time that sheaf is lifted. We're going to count to get to Shavuot. All right, so let's look on it. 15, let's look at it.
And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you shall bring an offering of new grain to the Lord. You shall bring from your settlements 2 loaves of bread as an elevation offering. Each shall be made of 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, baked after leavening, as first fruits to the Lord. With the bread you shall present as burnt offerings to the Lord 7 yearling lambs without blemish, 1 bull of the herd, and 2 rams with their grain offerings and libations, a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. You shall also offer 1 he-goat as a purification offering, and 2 yearling lambs as a sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall elevate these, the 2 lambs, together with the bread of first fruits as an elevation offering before the Lord. They shall be holy to the Lord for the priest. On that same day you shall hold a celebration. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall not work at your occupations. This is a law for all time in all your settlements throughout the ages.
Okay, so this holiday that we're getting, you're going to count from the day of that lifting up of that sheaf. You're going to count
50 days.
7 weeks. So 7 sets of 7 days.
49.
The day after that is day 50. Mm-hmm. So 7 times 7 is 49. The day after that is day 50. And so what holiday is that?
Shavuot.
Okay, does it say that here?
No.
No. Nope. So That's why we call it Shavuot. Because what else are you going to call it? There's no name.
Call it Memorial Day.
There's no name here. And this is the only holiday that we get that doesn't give us a date.
So when was that made up?
What?
The holiday, the name of the holiday.
I don't know. But if you're going to call it that holiday that happens after Passover, it's the one that has something to do with you count a bunch of weeks.
Yeah.
Shavuot. Shavuot is week. Shavuot is weeks.
Okay.
But isn't that when we celebrate the giving of the Torah at Sinai? Mount Sinai? Am I mixing something up?
Huh? No, you're not. Is it here?
No.
No.
It was added.
It was added. By whom?
The rabbis.
Receiving Torah on Shavuot is added by the rabbis. Why? Huh? To give it weight and meaning. It doesn't have enough weight and meaning that God says this is Moadei, one of the Moadei Kodesh, one of the holy times. That doesn't give it enough weight and meaning.
But it needs a name.
Well, it needs a name. Okay, we called it the week's holiday, but Shavuot.
But all of our holidays have a historical
context. All of our holidays have a historical meaning as well. Why? Rita, it just says do Pesach. It just says do Chag HaMatzot. It does not have anything about history, nor does Shavuot.
The rabbis.
But why did the rabbis do it? Isn't it enough?
Give it more weight.
Give it more weight.
It's in the Torah.
Because we're a people, not just a religion.
Because they weren't agricultural anymore. So if it is an agricultural festival and you are working on Wall Street, what is your connection to these holidays? Zippo. And what's going to happen to the observation of these holidays? They will go away. So you have to do something to make these holidays relevant to the people working on Wall Street. Yes? Flight attendants will not relate to a harvest festival. Brain surgeons will not relate to holding up a sheaf and counting 50 days from that till the next harvest, right? Zero meaning. So the rabbis, in their great wisdom, say, of course, we celebrate these because it's God's appointed times. Of course. And that would be enough. Dayenu. But we are so lucky that it works out. The Torah, if you count very carefully what month, blah, 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 how when they came out of Egypt, blah, 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 when you go through this very complicated calculation, we are so blessed that Torah was given, can you believe it? On Shavuot. Can you believe it? So we are so lucky as a people that on our sacred occasion, it was that very day that Moshe comes down with Torah. That very day. And their great wisdom. Right? Like one time, I remember one time in high school, at yeshiva, one time they walked us through the calculation. I was like, what? So if you look carefully at how they derived that it was Shavuot that Moshe got Torah, it is brilliantly convoluted, right? In such a way that it's like, but of course.
It was reverse engineered.
It was reverse engineered, exactly. So we have the giving of Torah on Shavuot. We have the exodus from Egypt on Pesach. We got one more holiday. We got Sukkot. What are we going to do with that? Susan's like, eat. We're gonna eat in a hut. Absolutely.
Harvest. And the end of Sukkot is Simchat Torah.
That's not an accident. It is not an accident. At the end of the holiday of Sukkot, we have a holiday called Simchat Torah, rejoicing in the Torah. We finish the book of Deuteronomy, we begin the book of Genesis. When the rabbis are looking for what speaks to them, it is not agricultural. It's Torah. Right? What's going to preserve the Jewish people? What are the Jewish people going to be using to actually keep themselves a people? Torah. So Shavuot becomes about receiving Torah, about revelation, and Sukkot becomes about pointing towards the end of the holiday when we end Torah for a cycle and begin again. Right? The rabbis, in their genius, transform the holidays from agricultural observances to something related to Torah.
These would have been the Babylonian era.
These are the rabbis, right, who now have control once the temple is destroyed.
I think there's another genius idea at work here, and it is that to keep a people together, you have regularly scheduled holidays throughout the year to bring people together.
Every tradition has it. Terrestrial human culture. That's terrestrial human culture. Every culture ever has
some more than others.
Appointed times where you bring the people together.
We have them almost once a month or every other month, which is certainly more than Christianity does.
I don't know. Catholics have a ton of holidays.
Yeah.
All right. So where are we now?
22.
22.
And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord your God.
So we went from spring, Passover, and Chag HaMatzot. Now we went through summer, whether you knew that or not. We went 50 days, so we're in the summer where we have what we call Shavuot, right? The Feast of Weeks. Now you'll understand why when you see something translated the Feast of Weeks. Now you know why. Okay, so Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. Then what are we coming to now?
Harvest.
We get a tag. We get a tag for both spring and summer. What is the tag? When you're having harvest festivals, we get this tag that when you have your harvest festivals, P.S.
Don't forget the poor.
Don't forget. You do not get to reap all the way to the edges. Because that belongs to the poor, not to you.
This was in a reading last week or two.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So we are getting a tag because we already got the commandment. But we're being reminded, don't forget, people, when you harvest and you have your celebrations, don't forget. You don't go all the way to the edges.
And we get that tag every Rosh Hashanah with our food drive, too.
Yes, we do. We make a tag, right? All right, 23.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people thus. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts. You shall not work at your occupations, and you shall bring a gift to the Lord."
Okay. So we're in the 7th month. So where are we now?
Fall.
We're in the fall. In the fall, what do we have here?
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
What's it called here?
Yom HaTruah? No.
Day of Atonement.
No.
It says it's the Day of Atonement.
Mapitom, we haven't read that yet.
No.
Did you hear that come out of Bert's mouth? No, you did not. Speak to the Israelite people in the 7th month. On the first day of the month, you shall observe complete rest.
Oh, Shabbat.
A sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts. You shall not work at your occupations, and you shall bring an offering by fire to Adonai. What's his holiday called? It's not called anything.
Oh.
It's a trick question. Keeps y'all fresh. Come on. It's not called anything. It's nothing.
Shavuot again.
It's a nameless moed. It's a moed kodesh. It's a sacred time. It's not called anything. Here. I'm talking here. In Emor, it's in the priestly writing up of the calendar, it's called nothing. It's called the 7th month, the first day of the month. It's the first day of the 7th month, period. That's it. This is the liturgical calendar that was persisting in Israel for a really long time.
And this is still the agricultural calendar.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first day they refer to goes back to the spring. It's the 7th month from the spring.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is the 7th month from Nisan.
Right.
New moon.
So now we're in what?
Tishrei.
Tishrei. Right? Tishrei, these names are not Israelite. Let me go back. All right. So that's all we get. Now let's go on. 26.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Mark the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall practice self-denial, and you shall bring a gift to the Lord. You shall do no work throughout the day, for it is a day of atonement on which expiation is made on your behalf before the Lord your God. Indeed, any person who does not practice self-denial throughout that day shall be cut off from his kin. And whoever does any work throughout that day, I will cause that person to perish from among his people. Do no work whatever. It is a law for all time, throughout the ages, in all your settlements. It shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial. On the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you shall observe this your Sabbath."
Okay. So the Day of Atonement, the priest is going to make kapara for you. And so you're going to get kapared. Terrific. What do Israelites do?
Nothing.
How do Israelites celebrate the Day of Atonement?
Total rest.
Self-denial?
Ha.
That's it.
The only thing we are told is we are to practice
Denial. Self-denial.
V'initem et nafshotechem. You shall afflict your souls.
Fasting.
Nothing is written.
About fasting.
Nothing is written.
Self-help.
You shall afflict your souls is all it says.
Oh, we can give up that fast.
Jody, be very careful right now. Be very, very careful right now. So the rabbis are left to figure out, well, we don't get prepared for by the priest anymore. There's no temple. There's no ritual whereby the people get expiation made for them. So what happens to the Day of Atonement? What were the Jews supposed to do?
Do it ourselves.
There's no priest. There's no holiday. But we have to have the holiday because it says so right here. So what's left? The only thing left after the temple is v'initem et nafshotechem. You shall afflict your souls. That's the only thing we have left. So the rabbis ask, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to afflict your soul? What are we going to tell them to do on the 10th day of the 7th month? Watch bad television? Like, what does it mean? Like, make them watch reality TV for like half the day. So what? To afflict their souls. So clearly the rabbis decide, okay, well, what is self-affliction? Refraining from
The ordinary.
refraining from the ordinary in the case of eating and drinking, and it's refraining from pleasure
Sure.
in other cases, right? So what did they decide? We're not going to eat or drink. We're going to refrain from that because that's going to afflict us. What else did they say we shouldn't do?
Sex.
Well, work is for all of them. Sex. So no pleasure. So if you're going to afflict your souls, then you're refraining from those things that give us pleasure.
No perfume.
Huh?
No perfume.
So, just like sex, no perfume. Right. It's actually not no perfume. That's not the prohibition. The prohibition is against anointing oneself. So, if you anoint yourself, it's generally with oil that smells good. right? And so no anointing. Like, so we grew up, we weren't allowed to use lotion, right? You don't put things on you that generally were a way of spoiling yourself. And even if it was considered normative, right? Even if it was normal that everybody would have put that on every day, still it is refraining from something that gives us pleasure, which is we don't stink, all right? So you have to be hungry and thirsty. You have to stink. You can't have the pleasure of marital relations. What else?
No shaving.
No bathing. We don't bathe. We don't bathe, right? Because that was a luxury. That was considered like a pleasurable added thing, right?
But you must take medicine.
Of course. Of course.
Right.
You must take medicine, of course.
No leather.
The refraining from leather. What's that about?
Animals. Wearing mourning, a sign of mourning.
So what is it? All right. So it's the sign. Is it mourning? Don't know. I actually don't know. Animals. So what's that? So
I think it's about respecting animals, not using their body parts.
except we do.
Well, on Yom Kippur, no.
Why not? We wear leather shoes all the time. We wear leather belts. We make our tents out of leather. So
but that's
why?
Our comfort too. The shoes and the belts. And it's all for our comfort.
If you could afford it, your shoes were made of leather. If you could afford it, you had leather other stuff. It was expensive. It was a luxury. So you don't engage in flaunting, in wearing and enjoying things that are luxurious. So that included leather. And the rabbis add, I know we kill them and scrape their skin and put it in the sun and dry it and tan it and cut it and wear it. Yes. But maybe on Yom Kippur, it's not such a good idea to come before the Holy Blessed One as we're looking for atonement, wearing something we chopped up and scraped to put on our feet.
I think the hardest thing about Yom Kippur is what you have to do in your head and with other people, not denying food, but admitting that you really made mistakes and going to those people and saying, I really am sorry for what I've done.
Absolutely.
But that's not here.
Yeah, that is not here.
No, but if we're adding things that make us uncomfortable, that certainly I think is
certainly does.
What about mink coats?
What about mink coats? The irony of this is when I was young, and I'd see all these people coming in tennis shoes. Okay, and here I gotta tell you, this one drives me crazy. I have to tell you, if you're gonna wear tennis shoes on Yom Kippur, they shouldn't be leather. I don't get it. I see all these people coming to shul in leather tennis shoes. Why? If you're gonna wear leather, wear your nice ones. Why are you wearing tennis shoes dafka on the holiest day of the year? The only reason we wear tennis shoes is because we're wearing canvas.
And their
it's
wives
like
have
hilarious to me, huh?
And their wives have meat coats.
And so I grew up seeing all these people come in canvas shoes and mink coats.
Right.
It's like, what? What? Right?
Because it's Wisconsin.
Because it's Wisconsin. I grew up in Atlanta, but it was the day that everyone had a new hat. Women had a new hat. They had a new suit.
That's right.
It was the dressiest, most showy holiday of the year.
All right.
My mother always had a new hat and new suit, right? And new shoes for Yontif, of course. Right? So it is this crazy way that we continually as human beings just don't get it, right? Or we just are who we are. We have our tendencies, but it's hilarious to me that you're going to come without wearing leather, but you're wearing how many dead animals on your back, right, with your main coat?
I think, Amy, I remember in Chicago that Yom Kippur meant that the new Cadillacs were coming out.
Yeah, right? Exactly right. New Cadillacs that you'd park down the road and walk the rest of the way to shul so no one should see you driving on Yom Tov.
That's right.
Exactly, yes. Sheldon.
The amazing thing is that the penalty is so severe.
Yeah.
All the other holidays.
Yes. So it is very clear that from very early on, Yom Kippur was the thing, right? It was a defining holiday, right? That you will be cut off from your kin if you don't observe it, right? So it is a very serious
And you'll
thing.
perish if you work.
Yes.
Why?
Right? So very clear.
Is the 10th day
So
meaningful compared to the 14th day?
If Shabbat is the most important holiday, why aren't these prescriptions more so for not keeping Shabbat than they are for Yom Kippur, which has to be ranked number 2?
What happens if you don't keep Shabbat? You're stoned.
Oh, okay.
Really? Just to be clear. Is that severe enough for you? Being cut off from your kin, okay, maybe terrible, it may be a blessing, but stoned? That's really bad.
That doesn't mean marijuana.
Yeah, that's it. If you carry wood.
Yes, you were put to death. It was treason.
Cannabis.
No, not that stone.
Why the
Actual
10th day
stone.
opposed to the 14th day or when the moon is?
I went there too.
We don't know. We don't know.
Because it doesn't appear very often, does it? That there's
No.
a celebration on the 10th day of it.
No. So possibly 10 is another number of wholeness. We're not told. We're not told. All right, so let's go to 33.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Say to the Israelite people, on the 15th day of the 7th month, there shall be a feast of booths to the Lord, to last 7 days. The first day shall be a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. 7 days you shall bring gifts to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall observe a sacred occasion and bring a gift to the Lord. It is a solemn gathering. You shall not work at your occupations."
All right, so we have here Chag HaSukkot, the festival of booths. To Susan, to go back to your point, why do we celebrate the Feast of Booths? What's the reason?
Well, wasn't it because it was the harvest time and people brought their harvested crops and
Yes. What's the reason we're given here that we celebrate Sukkot?
Because God says so. There's no reason.
There's no reason.
God says so.
What do we teach our kids about being in Sukkot?
Fragility of the world.
Traveling in the wilderness. That's why we make Sukkot. Because it was the time where it was just us and God. We were only dependent on God. God took care of us. And so we make Sukkot and we live in these fragile booths. We leave our permanent dwelling, blah, 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 blah. It's all rabbinic. It's all rabbinic. Not just Simchas Torah. The whole reason for Sukkot is historical. It is the time of the wandering in the wilderness.
Why did the rabbis make Sukkot follow hard on the heels of Yom Kippur, the 10 days of Atonement?
Ha 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 ha. A very good question. It was not the rabbis.
It's here.
It's here.
Ah.
So why we get... In the fall, we get on the 7th month, there's a lot going on. On the first day, you've got Yom Tov and something about blasts. And then we got the Day of Atonement happening on day 10, which is a pretty intense thing about afflicting blah, blah, blah. And then, hard on the heels of that, comes Sukkot. What's up with that?
Relaunch.
Well, there's an intimacy in being in a booth with family and friends, and that would be making up for the stress of atonement.
So Sarah says, if you're going to be hanging out together in the sukkah, that's intimate, that's a good thing, it's a good time, and it's a reward for having suffered on the Day of Atonement. Right, you're close. What happens on Sukkot? What happens on these holidays? Food. You're bringing an offering, which means you're going to eat meat. You're going to celebrate. Every culture that has a festival, you can imagine, right? Forever this has been, it's not just Jew, forever for all human civilizations ever, when you have a festival, what are you going to do? Eat. You're going to play music. You're going to sing. You're going to dance. You're going to have a party. What comes after this holiday? For us, rabbinically, what in this system, what comes after Sukkot? Winter. What happens in winter?
We don't have much
We're
food.
starved.
Nothing. Right? There's no holiday in winter. Robert, you're looking confused.
Was this the big celebration of we had a great year, thank heavens? We got enough food for the winter.
We have enough food for the winter. So we're going to have a huge party because this is the last holiday of the year.
Because winter's coming.
Winter is coming. Exactly.
Well, but it's also, thank you, Lord, for sustaining us.
Yeah.
For having, we had a good year. We had stuff in the freezer.
Thank you, God. We have a full cellar with root vegetables, or whatever it is. We had a great time this year. The year's over. This is the end of the year. So it's not just hard on the heels of Yom Kippur, say some scholars. It's actually, Sukkot is the whole point. Sukkot is the holiday of the year.
Really?
You've got your harvest, you're going to make it through the winter, you think back, you take out your scrapbook. What happened this year? Let's process. What kind of a year was it for? All that stuff is happening at Sukkot.
It's a gratitude.
Now, if we start at Sukkot, now ask me your question. Or you answer your question. The goal is Sukkot, the party of Sukkot. Now answer me why this is here.
You made it through. You have escaped the affliction, and now it's time to party. It's Mardi Gras.
Okay, we have Mardi Gras. Why back up? If we start with Mardi Gras, we're starting with the reality of the harvest. They didn't make that up, right? The harvest is the harvest. It's when stuff grows. So they didn't make up Sukkot. Sukkot is based on what's growing. What they made up was something right before that. So it isn't, why does Sukkot follow the Day of Atonement? The question is, Sukkot is what it is, because that's when things grow. The question is, why is the Day of Atonement placed?
It's the year-end review.
It's the year-end review. If you're heading towards Sukkot, they add a very serious accounting of the soul, a very serious, for us, accounting of the soul as the year end. Let's go back pre-rabbinic. We're in an agricultural society. We're heading towards the big party at the end of the year. Why is Yom Kippur here? What does Yom Kippur do again?
Helps us appreciate.
What does Yom Kippur do? What does it do?
Gets rid of the sins.
It gets rid of the sins.
So you can
Party. Right? That is why Yom Kippur is placed before Sukkot. The big party at the end of the year, you want to go into that feeling like you can party, and you want to know that you are free as a people of sin. Everything has been cleaned and purified ritually. The presence of the divine can dwell here. Let's party. Yeah? So, Yom Kippur is not the point. Yom Kippur prepares you for Sukkot. Now, the rabbis were so smart that they put a historical thing to every holiday, because without with what's happened to Sukkot for us.
Yes, right.
Again, we have to go to shul? Are you kidding me? And we're going to be outside? Like, really? There's bees. Sukkot is nothing for us. What has stayed is Yom Kippur.
But we have break fast.
What has stayed is a sense that we need to be purified of sin. That never went away. The problem for me is then we miss the party.
Right.
The point of doing all this hard affliction, apologizing to each other, owning up to our junk, the point of that is to feel free enough to then, as a community, have a sacred observance of rejoicing.
But isn't that selling short what we're supposed to do on the Day of Atonement, which is should be, central, cleansing ourselves, rather than preparing for a party?
No, I don't think so. I think we have to do the hard work. It doesn't sell it short to say, and then you're going to go into your final celebration, your final holy time of the year. I don't think it sells it short. I think we've overemphasized it now. So I don't mean to make it sound utilitarian, if that's what you're saying. I don't mean to cheapen it by saying Yom Kippur serves, to get you to the banquet hall. But I feel like we've lost something in going, okay, break fast, yay, we're going to eat. Nobody really eats at break fast, first of all. You take 3 bites and you're full. And it's just, You eat?
I said, speak for yourself.
Speak for myself. Okay, I take 3 bites and I'm done. Like, I'm like, whatever. And I collapse. You can imagine, I collapse. But I feel like we've missed, like we've done all this work. Where's the communal celebration of we fixed it? We did it again. Like we dug deep, we afflicted ourselves, we made it through, we apologized, and now we're going shopping for back-to-school clothes.
No,
like there's...
What do you want to do then? What would you like us to do?
I hear a high holiday sermon.
Here's the high holiday sermon.
Well, you use the word party, and I guess maybe that's what some people are reacting to, but my sense of what that celebration is being thankful for.
Every one of them are.
For having a good year.
Every one of them are.
Whether it's
the agricultural
health,
gratitude
friends,
festival. Yes.
Yes. With that is something that we have lost
in general.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, so what do we tend to do? We call this now Rosh Hashanah. We're thankful for the year, we're thankful for our friends, we're thankful for our health, we're thankful for another year, and then we're going to suffer.
Right.
Do you see how bass-backwards that is?
But I thought that if you needed to do Rosh Hashanah so you could get through the Day of Atonement.
No.
In other words, wrong.
No, it's not wrong. It's what we've made that up because we've lost the relationship between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Now that this became Rosh Hashanah during the Babylonian exile, now we got to figure out the relationship between this and this. So we started to overemphasize the relationship between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Not overemphasize, I shouldn't judge. I'm just saying that shift happens because we no longer celebrate an agricultural festival that we're so grateful we have enough food and we're going to make it and blah, 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 blah. We don't have it anymore. So now it becomes about doing all that gratitude stuff on Rosh Hashanah, right? And then 10 days later we go into Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu. Forgive us even though we're worthless. It's a bizarre way to start the year, people. And all I'm saying is that's not how it was designed. What we're reading, I'm not saying it's better or worse, what we're reading is how it was designed. Okay. So that you have the harvest, you back up, the last harvest of the year, you back up, and you have your big let's get it right. day. That makes complete sense to me. Once you divorce Yom Kippur from Sukkot, it makes less intuitive sense, right? And you're lifting up this first day, and 10 days later you're going to do all this
Shouldn't that be reversed?
affliction.
Yom Kippur then come before Rosh Hashanah?
I think it makes more sense for Yom Kippur to precede your celebrating, your festival. And we do it now backwards. And so there's lots of explanations, believe me, for why we do it this way. Unlike New Year's, where you get drunk and drink champagne, and unlike that, we begin the new year. How do we want to be? How do we want to live?
Well, you're president of the board of the rabbis. Can't you change that?
Yeah, can't you do something about that, Mickey?
Well, with Sukkot, it's also a question of completion and then rejuvenation. We're completing the cycle of reading the Torah. We're finished, but we're starting off a brand new year.
A new year of reading. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a little sad to me that we don't have much going on anymore after we're done with all this Yom Kippur business.
They do, when they talk about hair, they talk about 10 days before the Day of Atonement, and they say, but it's just not mentioned because that came later that we've decided it was the new year, right?
What?
It is written in here. We did read it that 10 days before the Day of Atonement.
We have something.
Yeah, it says something with loud blasts.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. But it was clearly not, if I'm correct, the new year.
Correct. The new year was Pesach.
Was Pesach, right?
Right.
And this
so
is the 7th.
the loud blast business is likely about, it's the month of Yom Kippur and Sukkot.
Right.
It's that month, people. Wake up. Pay attention, right? So likely that's why we have loud blasts on the first day of that month.
And were they the shofar? Was it a shofar blast?
We're not told.
But it would have to.
No, it doesn't have to be. It could be trumpets.
Oh.
We don't know.
Trumpets greeted Moses when he came down.
Right.
Likely it was trumpets. Because that's how you, the king is here, or whatever, when you really want, or alarm, or wake up, something's happening. You blew trumpets.
Weren't they also horns? No, I mean, they didn't have brass trumpets then.
Sure they did.
They did?
They had silver, of course. So when they went to war, they blew a certain blast on the trumpet.
Gabriel.
Huh?
Gabriel blow.
Okay. I don't know the reference, but okay.
Another field
I'll trust you on that.
When did these instruments get created and how did they evolve? Because I didn't know there were trumpets in wandering the desert.
Okay, stop right there.
Judy, you never saw Charles Nesta.
They brought them along with the timbrels.
That's right, Charles Nesta.
They came with the timbrels.
Yeah, I mean, I think of harps, strings, and wooden instruments. And
when are we talking?
Yeah.
When are we talking?
Thousands of years back.
All right. They didn't wander in the desert and blow trumpets.
No, I know.
But they
But
had
in the
timbrels.
era that we're describing, I just never thought about tubas and trumpets and clarinets.
Okay, I'm not talking a trumpet like
Just some kind of
Armstrong.
Right.
I'm talking a long silver horn. For sure. Right? Like,
Those old ones that the Buddhists had that were like
Well, yeah, they have chrome horns.
but they didn't have any. They
or
just
brass, right? You had
big one there.
you
one
had
here.
ways to make noise with something metal. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying we don't know.
Yeah.
We made up the shofar business.
I like the shofar business.
I like it.
Yeah.
Sarah likes the shofar business. All right, we are keeping the shofar.
Yeah, good.
Now, I want to find out. I'm going to
okay.
investigate about these instruments.
Of
It's
thousands of
fascinating.
years ago, and how old our tradition is. And we go back to the desert and wandering. And there's something traditional and wonderful about it.
And there's something ancient
Yes.
about
Yeah,
it,
yes.
right?
So-
Which is, I think part of our attachment to it being a shofar is how ancient an instrument that is.
The more ancient I get,
and the more ancient we get, the more we appreciate those things. Okay, I think we will close it there.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.